The stars were dying. At least, that is what it felt like to High Counselor as she stood at the great window of the Assembly Hall. Beyond the glass, the night sky of Prime sparkled with 1,000,000 points of light. But 3 of those lights were now dark. 3 colony worlds gone forever. The Empire had stood for over 100,000 years. Her people had mastered the secrets of faster-than-light travel when most species were still learning to make fire. They had built cities that floated among the clouds. They had created art and music that made other species weep with joy. They had believed in their quiet pride that they would last forever. They were wrong. Turned away from the window, the assembly hall was full. Every major leader of the people sat in the curved rows of seats, their silver skin reflecting the soft blue lights of the chamber. Normally, their faces showed the calm wisdom that her species was known for. Today, she saw only fear. "The swarm has taken 3, announced Fleet Admiral. He stood at the center of the room, his tall figure casting a long shadow. His voice was steady but could see his hands shaking slightly. "That makes 3 worlds lost in the past 20 cycles. 3 Minor and the Outer Ring Colony. Combined population of 4 billion souls." A soft cry came from somewhere in the audience. Someone was weeping. "Show them," said quietly. Nodded, he touched a control on his wrist and the air above the assembly filled with a holographic image. It showed a beautiful world of green forests and blue oceans. Then the image changed. Dark shapes appeared in the sky. Millions of them, billions. They fell upon the world like a living blanket covering everything. When the image cleared, there was nothing left. No forests, no oceans, no cities, just bare rock and dust. "This is what the do," said. "They do not conquer, they do not negotiate, they consume. Every living thing on a world becomes food for the swarm. They grow larger with each world they take, and they are coming here." The assembly erupted in noise. Some leaders shouted questions, others argued with each other. A few simply sat in silence, their faces blank with shock. Raised her hand, and slowly the room became quiet again. "How long do we have?" she asked. 40 cycles, replied, perhaps less. "The swarm moves faster than we predicted. Our fleet has engaged them 7 times. We have lost every battle." "That cannot be," said Elder, one of the oldest members of the council. "Our ships are the finest in the galaxy. Our weapons are superior to any known force." "Our weapons are excellent," agreed. "Against a normal enemy we would win easily, but they are not normal. They do not fear death. They do not retreat. They do not tire. For every one we kill, 10 more take its place. Our shields can hold against their attacks for hours, but they attack for days without stopping. Eventually our shields fail, and then—" he gestured at the holographic image of the dead world. Closed her eyes. She had known this moment would come. She had spent the last 10 cycles searching for any solution, any hope. She had found only one, and it terrified her more than the swarm itself. "There is one option we have not tried," she said. The room went silent. All eyes turned to her. "We could ask the humans for help." The reaction was immediate. Shouts of anger and disgust filled the hall. Elder rose from his seat, his silver face dark with fury. "Humans?" he spat. "Those primitives, those savages. They have been spacefaring for barely 300 years. They are violent, emotional, and completely unpredictable. Half the galaxy is afraid of them, and the other half thinks they are insane." "They are survivors," said a quiet voice. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. She was young, barely past her first century. Her name was, and she served as a junior diplomat in the Foreign Relations Ministry. She should not have spoken in such a gathering, but she continued anyway. "I have studied the humans," said. "Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are strange, but they have faced extinction many times on their home world. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters from space. Each time they survived. Each time they came back stronger. They have something we do not have." "And what is that?" asked coldly. "They know how to fight when there is no hope left." Nodded slowly. The humans have a saying. I read it in one of their historical texts. When you have nothing left to lose, you have everything to gain. We have everything to lose, and we are running out of options. This is madness, said. The humans will never help us. We have ignored them for centuries. We have called them primitives behind their backs. Some of us have called them worse things to their faces. Why would they risk their lives for us? Had no answer. She only knew that she had to try. I will go myself, she said. I will travel to Earth and speak with their leaders. I will tell them the truth about what we face, and I will ask for their help. And if they refuse, asked. Looked once more at the holographic image of the dead world. In 40 cycles, that could be Prime. That could be her home, her people, everything she had ever loved, reduced to dust and silence. Then we will die, she said simply. But at least we will die knowing we tried everything. The assembly voted that night. It was not unanimous. Many still believed that asking humans for help was a mistake. But in the end, desperation won over pride. Would go to Earth. She would beg if she had to. Because on the edge of destruction, there was no room for pride anymore. The human ship arrived at Prime exactly when they said it would. This surprised many, who had expected the humans to be late or to get lost along the way. Instead, the vessel called Endurance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the precise coordinates, at the precise time, down to the second. Watch from the observation deck as the ship approached. It was nothing like vessels. Her people built ships that were smooth and beautiful, made of crystal and light. The human ship was ugly. It was covered in thick armor plates. Weapons stuck out from every angle. It looked like something designed by people who expected to be attacked at any moment. It looks like a weapon, said Admiral standing beside her. Perhaps that is the point, replied. The Endurance docked at the main station, and the delegation gathered to meet their guests. Had brought her finest diplomats and advisors. They wore their ceremonial robes of silver and blue. They had prepared speeches of welcome and gestures of respect. The airlock opened, and the humans stepped through. There were only 2 of them. The first was a man of medium height with black hair and calm eyes. He wore simple clothes, dark and practical. He carried no weapons that could see. He walked with the easy confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. The second was a woman. She was shorter than the man, but something about her made her seem larger. Her face was on one side, and her left arm was made of metal. She wore a military uniform covered in medals and symbols that did not recognize. Her eyes moved constantly, checking every corner of the room, every person present. High Counselor, the man said, bowing slightly. I am Ambassador. This is General Park. Thank you for inviting us to your world. Return the bow. Thank you for coming, Ambassador. I know we are asking much of you. You have asked nothing yet, said with a small smile. But we know why you called us. The swarm, you want our help fighting them. There was a moment of uncomfortable silence. Had prepared a long explanation, a careful argument building up to the request. The human had cut straight to the heart of the matter in seconds. Yes, she admitted. That is exactly why we called you. Nodded. Then let us talk. But first I would like to see everything you know about the swarm. All your intelligence, all your battle records, all your scientific studies. Everything. Of course, said, we will share everything, but may I ask, why? General spoke for the first time. Her voice was rough like stones grinding together. Because we don't fight enemies we don't understand. Understanding comes first. Fighting comes after. The next 3 days were strange for them. They had expected negotiations. They had expected the humans to demand payment, territory, resources, something in exchange for their help. Instead, the humans simply asked questions. General met with every military commander in the fleet. She watched recordings of every battle against the swarm. She studied the weapons, the tactics, the strategies. She asked questions that made the uncomfortable. Why did you retreat here? She asked. pointing to a moment in one battle. "We were taking heavy losses," Admiral explained. "Our shields were failing. But the enemy was also taking losses. They were almost broken." "Almost broken is not broken. We saved 3,000 soldiers by retreating." "And you lost the battle, and the planet, and everyone on it." Had no answer for that. Ambassador spent his time with the civilians. He walked through the streets of the capital city. He visited schools and hospitals. He talked to ordinary about their lives, their hopes, their fears. Many of them were afraid of him at first. They had heard stories about human violence, human unpredictability, but was patient and kind. He listened more than he spoke. One evening, young diplomat worked up the courage to ask him a question that had been bothering her. "Ambassador, why are you doing this? We have nothing to offer you. The Galactic Council declared the unbeatable and chose to simply avoid them. Fighting them is suicide. Why would humans take such a risk for a species that has never done anything for them?" Was quiet for a long moment. They were standing on a balcony overlooking the city. The lights of 1,000,000 homes sparkled below them. "Do you know what Earth was like when we first reached the stars?" he asked. Shook her head. "It was dying. We had poisoned our air and water. We had fought wars that killed millions. We had almost destroyed ourselves a dozen times over. When we finally left our world and met other species, do you know what they did? They laughed at us. They called us primitives. They said we were too violent, too emotional, too stupid to ever amount to anything." He paused, his eyes distant. "But a few species did not laugh. A few species helped us. They taught us things. They traded with us fairly. They treated us like we mattered. We never forgot those species. We never forgot that kindness." "But we were not kind to you," said softly. "We ignored you. We looked down on you." "That is true," agreed. "But you asked for help. That took courage. And when someone asks for help, truly asks with nothing left to offer, we answer. That is who we are. That is what makes us human." He turned to look at her directly. "Besides, they will not stop with your empire. If they grow strong enough, they will come for everyone, including us. Better to fight them now, while they can still be fought, than to wait until they are unstoppable." Understood then. Humans were not helping out of kindness alone. They were helping because they could see the future. They could see that running away never worked forever. Sooner or later, everyone had to fight. The question was whether they would fight together or die alone. 3 days after arriving, General called a meeting of all military leaders. She stood at the front of the room, a holographic map of the star system floating beside her. "I have seen enough," she said. "I know how to beat the swarm." The room went completely silent. "How?" Admiral asked. Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally found its prey. "You will not like it," she said. "But if you want to survive, you will listen. And then you will learn to fight like humans fight." General stood before the holographic display, surrounded by every senior officer in the fleet. The room was silent. All eyes were on her. "Your problem is simple," she said. "You fight to survive. You fight to minimize losses. You fight to protect what you have. This is reasonable. This is logical. And against the it will get you killed." Admiral frowned. "What would you have us do? Throw our soldiers into death for no reason?" "Not for no reason," replied. "For victory." She touched a control and the holographic display changed. It showed a recording of a battle against the swarm. The elegant ships moved in perfect formation, firing precise shots at the enemy. When they took damage, they fell back to repair. When shields failed, they retreated. It was a beautiful dance of strategy and caution. "You lost this battle," said. "Why?" "We were outnumbered 10-1, said. "Our supplies ran low. We made a tactical retreat to save our remaining forces." "And what happened to the planet you were defending?" Did not answer. Everyone in the room knew what had happened. The planet was dead now. 400 million people consumed by the swarm. Nodded. You saved 2,000 soldiers and lost 400 million civilians. Is that a good trade? Those soldiers will fight another day. They will defend other worlds. Will they? Or will they keep retreating until there are no more worlds left? The room erupted in angry voices. Officers shouted at the human general, calling her cruel, heartless, foolish, stood calmly and waited for the noise to die down. I am not here to insult you, she said when it was quiet again. I am here to teach you. They do not think, they do not fear, they do not plan, they simply attack until everything is dead. You cannot outthink an enemy that does not think. You cannot scare an enemy that does not fear. You can only destroy them, and to destroy them you must be willing to pay a price. She pulled up a new image. This one showed a human battle from their history, long before they reached the stars. It was called the Siege of, fought during something called the Korean War. Thousands of human soldiers held a small area against an enemy that outnumbered them many times over. These soldiers knew they would probably die, said. They knew the odds were against them. They fought anyway, not because they wanted to die, but because they knew that some things are worth dying for. Their families, their homes, their future. She looked around the room. Do your soldiers know what they are fighting for? Do they believe in it strongly enough to die for it? Young officer Minyu raised his hand. He was one of the junior commanders, barely 100 years old. General, how do humans find that strength? We value life above all things. How do you learn to accept death? Studied him for a moment. Come with me, she said. All of you who want to understand, come and see how humans prepare for war. The next few weeks changed everything. Minyu was assigned to train with a human marine unit led by Sergeant. She was small by human standards, barely reaching Minyu's shoulder. But there was something in her eyes that made him nervous. She had seen death many times. She had dealt it even more. The training was brutal. Humans did not just train their bodies. They trained their minds. They put themselves in situations of extreme stress, extreme fear, extreme pain. They learned to think clearly when everything was chaos. They learned to keep fighting when their bodies wanted to stop. Why do you do this to yourselves? Minyu asked after a particularly harsh exercise. He was exhausted. His muscles burned. He could barely stand. Handed him a container of water. Because battle is worse. If training is easy, battle will break you. If training is hard, battle will just be familiar. She sat down beside him. On my first mission, I was terrified. I thought I would freeze up and get my team killed. But then the training took over. My body knew what to do even when my mind was screaming. That is why we train so hard. We make war a reflex. Minyu watched the human soldiers around him. They were joking with each other, laughing despite their exhaustion. Some were singing songs from there. Others were showing pictures of their families, telling stories about children and parents and loved ones waiting at home. You seem happy, Minyu observed. How can you be happy when you know you might die tomorrow? Smiled, because we might die tomorrow. Every moment is precious when you know it could be your last. We do not waste time on sadness or regret. We enjoy what we have while we have it. She pulled out a small photograph. It showed a young girl with the same eyes as my daughter. She is 7 years old. When I go into battle, I do not think about dying. I think about her. I think about what will happen to her if the win. I think about the world I want her to grow up in. That is what I fight for. Minyu understood then. Humans were not fearless. They were afraid just like but they had learned to use their fear. They had learned to turn it into fuel. Meanwhile, General was teaching the admirals a new way of thinking. She showed them strategies they had never considered. Attack the enemy's weaknesses instead of defending your own strengths. Accept losses if it means destroying something valuable. Use deception and surprise to even impossible odds. The swarm has coordination nodes, she explained one day. Biological centers that control millions of drones. Destroy the nodes and the drones become confused and weak. Your scientists found these nodes years ago. Why did you never attack them? Admiral looked uncomfortable. The nodes are always deep inside swarm territory. Any ship we sent would be destroyed before reaching them. So you sent no ships at all. It would be a suicide mission. Leaned forward. And if volunteers knew it was a suicide mission and went anyway, what then? No would volunteer for certain death. Then you need to find who would, or you need to change what believe about death. The training continued. Slowly, something began to change in the soldiers. They began to train harder. They began to think differently. They began to understand that sometimes the only way to protect everything you love is to risk everything you have. Minyu was among the first to volunteer for the special mission General was planning. When his commander asked him why, his answer surprised them both. Because Sergeant showed me her daughter's picture, he said. I thought about my own family. My mother, my sisters, the students I used to teach before I joined the military. If I do nothing, they will all die. If I fight, maybe they will live. That is enough reason for me. They were learning. They were changing. And as the swarm drew closer to there, they were preparing to fight in a way they had never fought before. Not to survive, not to retreat, not to minimize losses. To win whatever the cost. The swarm arrived on the 38th day. It came from the darkness between stars like a living storm, billions of creatures moving as one mind, one hunger, one unstoppable force. When the first sensors detected them, officers wept at their screens. There were so many that they blocked out the stars. High Counselor stood on the bridge of the command ship, watching the darkness grow. Beside her, Admiral was giving orders to the fleet. His voice was steady now. The weeks of training with humans had changed him. Remember what we learned, he told his captains. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. Today we fight for our world, our people, our future. Today we show the galaxy what can do. General's voice crackled over the communication system from her own ship. Human fleet is in position. We are ready to begin Operation Burning Star. The plan was insane. Everyone knew it. Instead of defending directly, the humans had spent the last weeks launching raids deep into swarm territory. They had mapped the locations of coordination nodes. They had found the weak points in the enemy's endless mass. Now, as the swarm approached Prime, human ships were already behind enemy lines. All teams report ready, announced. Captain, are you in position? In position and holding, came the reply. Captain led the most dangerous mission of all. Her team would strike the primary coordination node, the brain of the entire swarm. If they succeeded, the enemy would fall into chaos. If they failed, nothing else would matter. Then let us begin, said. Attack. The battle erupted across the star system. Human and ships charged directly into the swarm, not to hold them back, but to draw their attention. Every enemy that chased a decoy was one less enemy guarding the nodes. On the ground, Minyu led a squad of mixed human and soldiers. They had been dropped behind enemy lines, on a small moon already overrun by the swarm. Their mission was to destroy a secondary node that controlled a quarter of the attacking force. Contact ahead, Sergeant whispered. She was crouched beside him, her weapon ready. Lots of them. Minyu looked through his scanner. Thousands of swarm creatures filled the tunnels ahead. They were horrible things, all claws and teeth and hunger. They did not sleep. They did not rest. They existed only to consume. We go through them, Minyu said. 3 months ago, he would have ordered a retreat. 3 months ago, he would have called this mission impossible. But that was before he learned to fight like a human. Together, agreed, for everyone waiting at home. They attacked. The fighting was brutal. Soldiers fell on both sides. Minyu saw humans and die, their bodies torn apart by swarm claws. But unlike before, no one ran. Every soldier kept fighting, kept pushing forward, kept moving toward the node. Fought like a demon. Her small size made her fast and hard to hit. She danced between enemies, her blade flashing, leaving death behind her. When a swarm creature grabbed one of her arms, she cut it off at the shoulder and kept fighting with one hand. Aminu shouted. "I'm fine," she gasped, blood pouring from the wound. "Keep moving, we're almost there." They reached the node chamber. It was a massive organic structure, pulsing with sickly light. Destroying it would throw millions of swarm creatures into confusion, but it was guarded by the largest creatures Minu had ever seen. "Set the charges," he ordered. "I will hold them off." "Minu, no. This is what we trained for. This is what we fight for. Set the charges, Sergeant. That is an order." He charged forward, weapon blazing. The giant creatures turned toward him, attracted by the noise. Behind him, he heard and the surviving soldiers placing explosives on the node. A claw caught his leg. He went down. Another claw reached for his head. Then a hand grabbed his collar and dragged him backward. Missing an arm and covered in blood, was pulling him to safety. "Charges set," she said. "Time to go." They ran. The explosion behind them shook the entire moon, and across the battlefield, a quarter of the swarm suddenly stopped moving, confused and lost without guidance. In space, the tide was turning. The human and fleet, fighting together for the first time, was pushing the swarm back. Every destroyed node weakened the enemy more. Every sacrifice created an opening. But the battle was not won yet. The primary node still lived. Captain's voice came over the communication system. Her signal was weak, broken by static. She and her team had fought their way to the center of the largest swarm hive ship. They were surrounded by enemies, cut off from any hope of rescue. "General, we have reached the primary node. Setting charges now." "Can you get out?" asked. There was a long pause. When spoke again, her voice was calm and clear. "No, General, they are everywhere, but the charges are set. When this node goes, the swarm dies." "Tell my daughter I kept my promise. Tell her I love her. Tell her to be brave." "I will." "It has been an honor, General." Firing now. The communication cut off. Seconds later, the hive ship exploded from within. A flash of light brighter than a sun filled the screens, and across the entire battlefield the swarm stopped. Not slow, not confused, stopped. Without the primary node, the billions of creatures had no direction, no purpose, no coordination. They drifted apart, attacking randomly, bumping into each other, easy targets for the combined fleet. "All ships," Admiral commanded, his voice breaking with emotion. "Finish them, for everyone who gave their lives today. Finish them all." The battle lasted 3 more hours. When it was over, the swarm was broken. Not destroyed completely. They would take years to hunt down every last creature, but broken beyond recovery. The threat that had consumed entire worlds was finally stopped. Stood at the window of the command ship, looking out at the debris field where the hive ship had been. Somewhere in that wreckage was Captain and her team. They would never go home. They would never see their families again. They had given everything. "How many did we lose?" she asked quietly. Checked his reports. 47,000 human soldiers, 32,219 ships. Nearly 80,000 dead. It was a terrible number, and yet. "How many would we have lost if we did nothing?" asked. Did not need to answer. They both knew. 14 billion on the alone, countless more across the remaining colonies. All of them would be dead. 80,000 had died so that billions could live. Finally understood what the humans had been trying to teach her. Sometimes there was no path without sacrifice. Sometimes the only choice was between losing some and losing everything. The humans had known this, and now they knew it too. The celebration was quiet. There were no parades, no loud music, no dancing in the streets. How could there be? Too many graves had been dug. Too many names had been added to the memorial walls. They had won, yes, but victory had come with a price they were still learning to count. High Counselor walked through the memorial garden at the center of the capital city. It had been built in just 3 days, a place where both humans and could honor their dead. The walls were covered in names. 80,000 names. Each one a person with a story, a family, dreams that would never come true. She stopped at one name, Captain. Beside it was a small holographic image of a young girl with her mother's eyes. Someone had placed flowers beneath the picture. Her daughter's name is. Turned, Ambassador stood behind her, his hands clasped in front of him. He looked tired. They all looked tired. She is 7 years old, he continued. She knows her mother is not coming home. She does not fully understand yet, but she knows. I am sorry, said. The words felt empty, useless. What could words do against such loss? Do not be sorry, said. Made her choice. She knew what she was doing when she set those charges. She knew she would not survive, and she did it anyway because she loved her daughter more than she loved herself. They stood in silence for a while, looking at the names on the wall. Names next to human names. Silver and gold and brown skin had all bled the same red blood. May I ask you something? Said finally. Of course. Why did you really help us? Your people gave so much. 47,000 of your soldiers died for a world that is not their home, for a people who looked down on them. We had nothing to offer. We gave you no reason to care about us. Why? Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Do you know what Earth was like when we first became aware of the larger galaxy? We had just barely survived killing ourselves. Our planet was sick, our people were divided, and we had no idea if we would last another century. When we met other species, most of them saw us as primitives, barbarians, a species that would probably destroy itself before it ever mattered. He looked up at the sky, where stars were beginning to appear in the darkening evening. But we survived, we learned, we grew, and we never forgot what it felt like to be alone, to be struggling, to need help and have no one offer it. So we made a promise to ourselves. We would be different. When someone asked for help, we would answer. Not because we expected something in return, but because we remembered what it felt like to need help ourselves. Nodded slowly. She understood at least a little, but there was still something she did not grasp. But it cost you so much. How can you accept that cost? How can your people accept that cost? Smiled sadly. We do not accept it, we mourn it. Every death hurts. Every lost soldier leaves a hole in someone's heart. But we believe that some things are worth that pain. Freedom is worth it. Justice is worth it. Standing up for others is worth it. He turned to look at her directly. Besides, they would not have stopped with your empire. They would have grown stronger with every world they consumed. Eventually, they would have come for us too. By fighting now, while we had allies, we saved ourselves as much as we saved you. It was the logical choice as well as the right one. Thought about that. Humans were strange. They were emotional and violent and unpredictable, but they were also wise in ways her people had never been. They understood something that in their 100,000 years of careful, cautious civilization had forgotten. No one survives alone. A few days later, the Galactic Council sent delegations to Prime. They wanted to know how the swarm had been defeated. They wanted to study the humans, to understand what made them different, to learn their secrets. Admiral met with them, alongside General. The general still had bandages on her shoulder from a wound she had taken in the final battle. She had refused to leave the front lines even when injured. Her soldiers would have followed her into the heart of a star. The humans fought without regard for their own lives, one alien delegate observed. They took risks that no sane species would take. Is this madness or something else? Laughed. It was a rough, tired sound. It is love, delegate. Love for their families, love for their friends, love for the future they want to build. When you love something enough, you will do anything to protect it, even die for it. But how do you convince soldiers to die? How do you make them willing to sacrifice themselves? You do not make them, you let them. Every human who fought here knew the risks. They came anyway, not because we ordered them, but because they chose it, because they understood what was at stake. The delegate looked confused. Your species is strange. Perhaps, but we are still here, and thee are not. That evening there was a small ceremony on the steps of the assembly hall. It was not a celebration of victory. It was something else, a promise. Stood before a crowd of humans and mixed together in a way that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Beside her stood, and others who had fought and bled together. Today we honor the dead, said, human and alike. They gave their lives so that we could stand here now. We will not forget them. We will not waste their sacrifice. She paused, looking out at the faces before her. Some were silver-skinned, some were the various colors of humanity. All of them were tired, sad, and hopeful. But we also make a promise. From this day forward, the Empire and the human people stand together. When one of us calls for help, the other will answer. When one of us faces darkness, the other will bring light. We are no longer strangers. We are no longer separate. We are allies. We are friends. We are family. She stepped back and stepped forward. Humans have a saying, he said. Blood is thicker than water, but there is an older version of that saying that most people have forgotten. The full version is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means that the bonds we choose are stronger than the bonds we are born with. He looked at who nodded. He looked at Minyu, and standing together in the crowd, their friendship forged in fire and pain. He looked at who had come to Earth as a desperate stranger and was leaving as an honored ally. Today we choose you, he said to the, and we hope you choose us too, not because we are perfect, but because we are willing. Willing to fight, willing to sacrifice, willing to stand together against whatever darkness comes next. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then Minyu stepped forward. His leg was still healing from the wound he had taken on the moon, but he stood straight and proud. I choose you, he said. I choose the humans who taught me what courage really means. Stepped forward beside him. Her missing arm had been replaced with a prosthetic, a gift from the medical corps. And I choose the who learned to fight beside us, who trusted us when they had every reason not to. Others stepped forward. Soldiers and civilians, old and young, silver and brown. They stood together, choosing each other, promising to face the future side by side. Watched them with tears in her eyes. 3 months ago she had thought her people would die alone. Now they had something they had never had before. Partners, friends, family. The stars were no longer dying. They were shining brighter than ever. And in their light, 2 species walked forward together into a new age. On the edge of destruction, they had turned to humans, and the humans had answered. That was the beginning of everything.